Hey, it's Mr. Wells, and this is going to be, I think, in all likelihood, my last recording of 2021 for this class. It's been a crazy year so far. We have tried to get back to normal, but uh, with this adaptive pause that we've been having, school shut down and everything, it just seems like last year, and again, in a lot of ways. But I appreciate you, appreciate who you are, what you do, and I want you to know that, um, you know, just keep on keeping on, keep doing the work, and your grade will go up. I've told you many times before, only though, I've never had a single person who did all the work who didn't pass my class. I've also told you it's very hard to get an A in my class, but it's not hard to pass. So all of you should be getting B's, C's, even a D. Just do your work and just do what it takes to finish strong. And then after that, have a great holiday. I hope that you do have a great break, and we'll be rested, relaxed, ready to go, and we'll see each other again when we come back on January 4th. All right. We are going to read the last two chapters, chapter 22 and 23 of Sing Down the Moon by Scott Odell. That was a bell. You probably missed that, don't you? Chapter 22. The snows melted and warm winds blew over Bosque Redondo, and green grass began to show along the banks of the river. The big gate at the fort opened every day, and the Long Knives marched out. The drums beat, the horns sounded, and then the soldiers went back in, and the gate closed. I waited every day, but my husband did not come. With spring settled on the land, the wagons brought more food for us, and I was able to save another gourd of flour. We now had enough food to last us on a journey of 6 days. Besides the two good blankets, we had a knife, which was like those the soldiers used on the ends of their rifles. I found it on one of the mornings when I went up to the fort. It was wrapped in a cloth and hidden in the grass. I sharpened it on a stone and put it away in the lean-to. The cloth, which was an arm's length of red velvet, would make a good girl's small dress or a jacket for a boy. It was a warm night with many stars and the sound of the river running far away. We had just eaten our supper when Tallboy came. He walked in so quietly that my black dog did not hear him. He sat down at the fire and ate everything that was left in the pot, hurriedly if he had never eaten before. He looked gaunt and fearful. My father said, "Did the Long Knives open the gate for you?" "They did not open the gate," Tallboy replied. "The gate was not open?" "No, but you are here." "I am here because of a hole in the wall," Tallboy said, "which I have known about for many weeks." "Where is this hole you have known about?" "It is in the place where they cook the food." Is it a round hole or one that is square?" "Neither one nor the other," said Tallboy. "It is a hole where they shove all the garbage." "Yes, I have heard of this hole," my father said. "The garbage goes through and falls on the ground outside the wall, and the people go there and pick it up." "That is the hole," Tallboy said, "of a right size for crawling. When no one looks, when everyone has left the place where they cook the food, and the people have come and carried away all the garbage. That is the time," Tallboy said. "When will the Long Knives know that you have crawled through the hole?" "In the morning, when they come to cook breakfast." "Not sooner nor later." "Then," my husband said. He sat staring into the empty pot. I brought him a bowl of corn mush, which he ate in a hurry, and then he fell silent, sitting on his haunches with one arm dangling and the other on his thigh. I thought that he would get up at any moment, and the two of us would flee the camp, but he sat there beside the fire, looking as if he might fall asleep. "The Long Knives will come in the morning," I said. "You will wake up behind the walls of the fort again." He glanced at me, blinking his eyes, and I suddenly knew that he had gone as far as he wished to go. He was back with his family. He had eaten our food. He would sleep beside our fire. What happened to him tomorrow did not matter. He was still blinking at me, halfway between waking and sleeping. Are you an old woman? I asked him. He stopped blinking. An old woman, I went on, my voice rising, a woman who eats a lot and dozes beside the fire. My mother said, he is worse than an old woman. He is like the old men of the Navajos, all of them. Tall boy got to his feet and unhitched his belt, making room for the big supper he had eaten. My mother looked at him, at his feet. She would like to have looked him in the face, as she did with me when she was angry. But it was against our tribal law for a mother-in-law to look at her son-in-law this way. She looked at his feet for a long time. He will soon have to change his name again, she said. What do you think it should be? Boy who sits at the fire? Boy who sleeps standing up? Or something else, like crawling through a hole? I will need to think hard, I said. We shall both think hard, my mother said. Tall boy looked at my mother's feet and then at me. He walked slowly around the fire and went outside. I heard him take a deep breath. I stood there and felt like crying. I had not cried since the day we left our home. After a while, I sat down beside the fire and cried. I cried for a long time, and nobody tried to stop me. Then Tall Boy came to the doorway and spoke my name and beckoned me to follow him. When I went outside, the first thing I saw was the old speckled horse that belonged to my father-in-law. We go now, Tall Boy said. He made a saddle of the 2 blankets and tied down the gourds that were filled with flour. The sharp knife he put in his belt. We did not say goodbye to our family. They knew that we would take our thoughts with us and leave our thoughts for them. Tall Boy got on the horse and we set off through the warm darkness. I had to run to keep pace with him, but when we got to the river, he let me climb up behind him. I untied the 2 gourds and hung them around my neck to keep them out of the water. My black dog I held in my lap. The river ran swift and cold. As the horse plunged into the water, the current swept us out and then back to shore. On the 3rd try, we kept going toward the far shore. We would have drowned except for the old horse. He must have been across the river many times in his life, for he knew how to float with the current and swim if he needed to. There was no moon, but all the stars were out, shining on the water. When we reached the shore, I jumped off the horse, and we went along the trail we had used once before. Some day I hope to have a horse of my own, and then I would ride beside my husband. Perhaps he would not own a horse by this time. Then it would be he who would have to walk. Across the river, evening fires of Bosque Redondo glowed softly. We left them far behind, moving along the trail until dawn. Then we made a fire and cooked some mush beside a small lake. My husband said, This is the time the Long Knives will find that I have gone. We have the night between us, but they will come fast. They will not follow us, I said to calm him and myself. There are thousands of Indians at Bosque Redondo. Will the Long Knives bother to look for one? And if they do, which way will they go? If they do anything, it will be to search the village. Our friends will tell them nothing. We slept until the sun was high, and awaking to the barking of my black dog. There were soldiers on the trail. By putting our ears to the earth, we could hear the footsteps of their horses, but they came from the west. From our hiding place, we watched them pass, driving a small band of Navajos toward Bosque Redondo. Tall Boy pulled the knife from his belt, and I think that he would have rushed out and attacked the soldiers alone if I had not pleaded with him. As it was, he made so much noise that one of the Long Knives stopped his horse and looked in our direction before he rode on. We left the small lake and rode to the northwest, but we had not gone far when my husband said, There are places closer than Canyon de Chelly where we can hide. These places are safer also. The Long Knives do not watch them like they watch the canyon. But the canyon is our home, I said. We have lived there. We know where wood is and water and food. The sheep. What of the sheep? I was walking beside him, and he glanced down at me in scorn. Sheep? They are eaten by the wolves, as I have told you, he said. If not, if there are some left, what do we do with them? Where can we graze them that they will not be seen by the long knives? We will be careful where we graze them, I said. There are hidden places that I know. He shrugged his shoulders, which he did when he did not want to talk about something, and fell silent. We went on for 6 suns, ate the last of our flour, and then snared rabbits and squirrels. I was certain that my husband had decided to go to Canyon de Chelly after all. But on the seventh day, Tallboy left the trail, and we went northward over a ridge into a wooded rolling country. He had hunted there once and called it Elk Running Valley. A stream ran down from the high mountains and wandered through a meadow until it came to a dam beavers had made from brush and trees. There the stream backed up and formed a small pond with grassy banks. We built a hut beside the pond and lived in it through the summer. It was here that my son was born. After that, Tallboy brought down poles from the high country, dragging them behind the speckled horses. He made the hut larger and strengthened the roof up for winter snow. He fashioned a throwing stick and killed 2 young deer. He was busy all the time, hunting or making something. He still could not use his injured arm, but he had become quick and skillful with the other one. He no longer seemed to think about his injury. I was busy too. I worked at the deer hides with a bone scraper and softened them in my mouth and made a pair of leggings for my son. I also made him a jacket out of the velvet I had saved and a heavy coat from a beaver pelt. Yet not a day went by that summer, or when the snows came, that I did not think of my sheep. All right, so we're getting ready to read chapter 23. Before we do, I want to show you this corn jerker earmuff I got. This was a gift from Mr. Blackadder and Miss Coulter and Mr. Carney to me as a teacher. Several of us teachers, I think all the teachers in the building got one. But I'm showing it to you because the password is corn jerker earmuff. Corn jerker earmuff. So what I want you to do is I want you to send me an email and type in corn jerker earmuff in the email, and I will give you 5 points of extra credit for watching these videos of Sing Down the Moon. So corn jerker earmuff in the memo line of the email. Okay. Last chapter, 23. One morning, early in the spring, while we were eating breakfast, soldiers appeared on the ridge. Our lean-to was hidden among the pine trees and could not be seen from where they stood, nor could they see the speckled horse, which was tethered beyond the lean-to. We felt uneasy nonetheless. The long knives came down from the ridge, riding fast. We were ready to flee, but they turned away from us and headed into the south. The long knives will travel for one day, no longer, Tallboy said. I have been in the canyon where they are going, and they cannot get through. They will have to turn back. We can look for them tomorrow. We finished eating our breakfast. The spring sun was warm. Beaver were working on their dams, cutting brush on the banks and swimming across the pond with it. Tallboy sat with his son in his lap and watched them for a long time, going back and forth. Then we loaded the old horse with our clothes and some dried deer meat and left Elk Running Valley before the sun was high. We kept off the trail the soldiers had used. At the top of the ridge, we went north and west. It was in the direction of our canyon, but I was afraid to ask my husband whether we were going there or not. If we were, then it would be better not to ask him. Sometimes, if he was asked too many questions, he would change his mind and do something else. It was not certain that we were going home until on the evening of the 5th day I saw high ramparts in the northern sky. They were crimson in the setting sun. Even the tall trees along their edges were crimson. I felt like shouting and dancing, like running around in circles, as I always did when I was very happy. But I walked quietly through the spring grass, as if I saw there was nothing in the sky. Tallboy was riding in front of me. He spoke and pointed into the north. Yes, I said calmly. We go because I am tired of hearing about sheep, he said, and for no other reason. It is a dangerous place to go. There are no sheep left, but still I go. If there is one left, it will be shaggy like a buffalo, and so wild you will have to catch it in a trap. But I go because I am tired of the sheep talk. Oh, coyote brothers in the far and near hills, I am tired of sheep. He nudged the speckled horse and rode on out of sight. My son was strapped into a carrying board slung over my back. I stopped and took him out of the harness and held him in my arms. The crimson ramparts had changed to gold, and a gold mist drifted over the sky. I turned his head so that he faced the stone cliffs as they changed to purple, and the first star came out. The next morning, Tallboy left to go into the canyon. He wanted to find out if any of the Long Knives were camped there or if the other tribes, the Apaches or the Utes, had come while we were gone. The old horse had grown slow and lame, so he left it behind and went on foot. In 2 days he returned, carrying a braided rope which he had picked up somewhere and two horseshoes. I saw no Indians, he said, while we were breaking camp. No signs of the Long Knives. Nothing has changed. After a time, not right away, I asked, "Did you see any of my sheep?" "One," he said, "on the trail to the mesa. It had more hair than a buffalo. At first I thought it was a buffalo. It has not been shorn for a long time," I said. "Nor will it be shorn soon," my husband answered. "It is wilder than a mountain sheep. You will have to catch it in a trap. But after you catch it, how you will shear it, I do not know." "I have shears," I said. "I hid them in the cave when we left." "You hid many things," Tallboy said. "We will need many things," I answered. The river ran full. Blue snow water brimmed over the banks and flowed into the meadow. The cornfield was the same field the Long Knives had left. The peach trees, which they had stripped of bark, stood in black rows. Our hogan was still a ring of gray ashes and tumbled weeds. We stopped there and talked, deciding where we would go. "The high mesa is safe," my husband said, "but if the Long Knives come, we will be cut off from water like we were before." "From water and from sheep," I said. "What sheep?" Tallboy asked. "The one that looks like a buffalo?" "There is a small canyon where the river forks," I said. "I have been there with my sheep. It has grass and a spring comes out of a rock. It is hidden from the big canyon so that you can pass by and not know it is there." "Let us go then to this place," Tallboy said. I started off, leading the way along the river to the big rocks that stood at the entrance to the hidden canyon. The rocks and the gnarled sycamores that grew among them formed a low, winding corridor, and Tallboy had to climb down from the horse to get through. Hidden Canyon was just as I remembered it. The yellow cliffs rose on all sides. The spring flowed from the rock and made a waterfall that the wind caught and spun out over the meadow. On the far side of the meadow was a grove of wild plums, where I had picked many handfuls of fruit. The trees now were covered with white and pink blossoms. But I had forgotten a cave. Tallboy saw it at once. "A good place," he said, and went off to explore it. The cave was on the face of the western cliff, where the morning sun shone first. It was about 30 feet from the ground and twice that many feet in width. To reach it, there were handholds cut into the snow, yellow stone, but some were worn away and I had never tried to use them. Indians had lived there a long time ago and left. No one knew why. Tallboy started to chip away at the handholds until, using the knife I had found at Bosque Redondo, he dug out 4 of the holds and tried them. I held my breath. I feared he would not ever be able to make his way up the face of the cliff. Even with 2 good hands, it was not easy, but he went up and came down without trouble. "See," he said to his son, "it is easy. Before long you will be able to climb also. For your mother we will stretch a rope which she can hold on to." Clouds were gathering, and he started working on the handholds again. While I watched him, my black dog pointed his ears, and I heard a small noise. It came from the far side of the meadow, near the wild plum trees, and I walked in that direction. I had not gone far out of the grass, and I saw a ewe looking at me. She turned away as I reached her, but did not flee. Her coat was thick and full of burrs. Beside her was a lamb. not more than a few days old. I took my son from his carrying board and held him up so he could see the lamb. He wanted to touch it, but with both hands he was grasping a toy which his father had given him, a willow spear tipped with stone. Tallboy had made up a song about the long knives and how the spear would kill many of them. Every night he sang this song to his son. I took the spear and dropped it in the grass and stepped upon it, hearing it snap beneath my foot. My son touched the lamb once before the two moved away from us. He looked up at me and laughed, and I laughed with him. Rain had begun to fall. It made a hissing sound in the tall grass as we started toward the cave high up in the western cliff. Tallboy had finished the steps and handholds and now stood under this cave's stone lip, waving at us. I waved back at him and hurried across the meadow. I raised my face to the falling rain. It was Navajo rain. The end. All right. Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit like and subscribe and enable your notifications so you can see all my great ELA videos. And remember that in Mr. Wells' class, it's always a great day for ELA.